Alright, so let's go over some of the various ways that we can edit paths that are already created or already existing. The first thing I'm going to go over is moving the points and segments. And we've gone over some of this in past exercises, but I just want to be thorough in showing the possibilities. So we know that we can select a point and we can actually move that point with the white arrow after we've selected it. We know that we can select a segment and start to move the segment around. The segment is flanked by 2 points. If I hold down on the shift key, I can move it along the vertical and horizontal axis. The other thing that we can do is we can select a point. We can look up here in the control panel, and here we see a number of options. The first option I'm going to look at right here is the coordinates. So your X and Y coordinates. Because we're working in a 2D space, we only have X and Y. If I actually start to toggle the up and down arrows on the X coordinate, you can see this path is moving in, I believe it's 1/8 of an inch increments. And then if I toggle on the white arrows, I'll move it up and down in 1/8 in increments. So that's good to know. We also know that we can use the arrow keys, which is my favorite way of nudging points around. So right now my arrow keys are moving it in a set number of increments every time I hit the arrow. If you want to change the number of increments that you are moving points and other things at, you can go to your preferences, so Command and K, and right here in the general, I'm looking at my keyboard increments. So right now I have mine set to 1 pixel. So that means every time I hit the key, things are moving at 1 pixel. You could also set this to inches, so I could set this to 0.25 IN and then click OK. And now I see when I move that point, it's moving in larger increments. I could go back to the control panel. Because the document is in pixels, we can see that anytime I put in something in inches, it's going to convert it into pixels, and click OK. And now you can see it's moving at a lot smaller increments. I'm going to go ahead and keep mine at the 1 pixel, so 1 px. And I'll go ahead and select this one up here on the ellipse, and I'll just practice kind of moving that around. So I'm going to move that up there, and then I'm going to come over to the control handle, and if I just pull on one side, okay, I can see that I'm just affecting that part of the segment. I'll go ahead and hit Command Z. So I'll go ahead and move this segment to that side, and this segment over here to this side, and kind of match those two. I'll play around a little bit more with just moving segments. So I know that if I click on this segment, and then I click and drag, now I'm moving both these points. I could click on this segment and start to move that around. I'm going to go ahead and play around with distorting this circle and creating a whole new shape. And I think I'll actually keep that one there. I'll click on this one. I'll pull the control handle this way. So I think I'm going to keep that control handle where it is, and then I'll come over to this control handle and I will distort this side, and I'm going to pull this inwards. So see if you can match that shape on the template. Okay, so let's go over converting points. So I'm going to select a point, and then I'm going to look up here in the control panel, and we can see the control panel has right here, it's telling us we've selected an anchor point, and right next to that is convert. Here's what we're going to work with. So right now, if I click the convert to corner, nothing will happen because this is already a corner point. But if I click right here, convert selected anchor to smooth, you can see that it changes it from a corner to a smooth point with handles. So I'll go ahead and do that to these other ones. Okay. So now that we know how to convert a point, let's play around with that and see if we can make some more practical shapes. Let's come over here to this circle and select the anchor point on top. Let's convert that smooth point to a corner point. Once that's converted, I'll click just on that anchor, and then I'll drag it up. I'll hold down on the shift key and I'll click outside, and now I've made a teardrop shape. Let's play around. Let's try to make this heart shape. Okay, so let's go ahead and convert this diamond shape into a heart. I'll go ahead and choose my white arrow, and I'll click this top point and pull it down, and then I will take these 2 points and move them up. I'll go ahead and keep those selected and convert them to smooth points, and I will move them approximately onto that template dotted line, and now I'll select them one at a time and adjust the control handles. See if I can match that template shape, and I'll move this point up just a little bit more. Maybe I'll pull this handle in just a little bit, and this handle in just a little bit as well. Alright, close enough. I'll zoom out, and let's come down here. Let's play around with deleting points and segments. So unlike selecting a point and hitting the delete key, you can see that when I deleted that point, it also deleted the segments that were connected to that point. What if I want to delete a point but keep the segments? I'll go ahead and do Command Z, and I'll select that point again, and instead of hitting the delete key, I'm going to come up here to the control panel, and this time next to anchors, I'm going to choose remove selected anchor. You're looking for this icon. So I'll hit that, and there now we can see we deleted that point, but we kept the path connected together. So I could go ahead and do that to this bottom point. That's how we use that feature in the control panel. So I'll go ahead and try that with this star. I'll delete some of these rays. So now that I've deleted those points, deleting the segments, there is no option for doing that. Okay, so you will just have to use the delete key. But you can see when I did delete that segment, it still kept the initial framework of that path that we have. So that's kind of the benefits of deleting a segment versus deleting a point. All right, I'm going to move on over to here to reshape segments. So this is kind of like a rehashing of the reshape tool that we used in the earlier exercise. But this is actually working through a different tool group. So if I actually wanted to find that tool, it's right down here under the pen tool. It's called the anchor point tool. And this tool does a lot of different things. I can actually click on a corner point, and if I click and drag out, I'm converting that to a smooth point. I'll do that over here too. So that's one thing that this tool does. I'm going to go ahead and do Command Z twice, and I'm going to show you the other thing that this tool does. If I hover over a segment, you can see I'm getting the same icon as the reshape tool. So if I click and drag, there you can see it's doing the same thing that the reshape tool does. Now if I click and start to drag on this point while holding down on the shift key, it's going to keep those control handles symmetrical. So if I come out really far in either direction, okay, it's going to make sure that this path is remaining symmetrical. If I release the shift key, then you can see it's now kind of this free form arc. I'll go ahead and try that on this side. Hold down the shift key. I'll hit Command and click. And there you have another way of reshaping paths using the anchor point tool. I'll come down over to here. So these last two come in pretty handy, especially when you are working with logos and icons and other graphic elements. So let's learn how to convert a stroked path, which is what we're looking at here, into a shape. So I want to take this stroked path and I want to turn it into a shape that has actually two vector paths. So I'll select it and I'll increase the stroke just for demonstration purposes. And then I'll come up to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. Okay, and there you can see that the path on the inside has disappeared. Okay, and now this is a shape that I can edit. You want to make sure when you use this option, you're using it when you are very sure that you are no longer going to have to edit the paths that you've created. I'll go ahead and do that with this one. So I have a stroked path and I will increase the stroke to about 15 points. Object, Path, Outline Stroke. And then I'll go ahead and use the reshape tool on the very end. So I'll hit Shift and C and I will take this segment and I'll just pull it out with the reshape tool and I'll hold down on the shift key. I'll do that on this side as well. I'm kind of rounding out these corners and then Command click. Let's go ahead and move over to here and try one more way of editing our paths. So this one comes in handy when you need repeated elements in a grid format. So the basic process is select your object with a black arrow. I'm going to go up to Object, Path, and I will go all the way down here, split into grid. When I do that, it brings up an options window. So right here, we can enter the number of rows and columns. I'll go ahead and click the preview, and I'll start to increase the number of rows, and then I'll increase the number of columns. Now, if I just click OK, I'm not really going to see much of an effect. This is going to divide it up into individual objects. However, if I come over and I start to increase the gutter, or the space in between, now you can see that it's adding a small negative space in between those. I'll go ahead and convert this to 0.05 on the rows, and I'll do 0.05 for the columns. I'll click and unclick the preview. If I wanted to, I could also add guides to this. So if I were making a grid for some kind of typographic layout, this would be a good tool to use. I'll go ahead and uncheck that, and I'll click OK. And now you can see I have these individual objects in a grid format. So let's go ahead and do a little more practice with that. Let's say I'm making a building shape. Okay, so I have the outline of the building, but I want to have a series of windows. But I don't want to spend a bunch of time duplicating shapes. So I'm simply going to click this rectangle that's already been created. I'll go into Object, Path, Split into Grid, and I will start playing around with creating that grid. So I'm going to do 3 columns with a 0.1 inch gutter, and let me see here. I want to do 10 rows with a 0.1 inch gutter, and then click OK. I'll go ahead and group those, Command G. I'll switch the stroke and the fill, and there we go. Alright, so we'll be using these quite often as we continue to go through